Alright, Lunar, the Silver Star story complete. Now, I gotta start at the beginning with this game. I had originally played the two games in this series, that is, the Silver Star and Eternal Blue, on my original Sega CD console that I purchased sometime during my high school days. I think maybe during grade 11 or grade 12 from a secondhand store called Cash Converters. Really great place. So sad that it's out of business now, but what can you do? So again, the Sega CD console that I speak of was the same console that I actually recorded the Cobra playthrough on, which is pretty neat. I could have played through it on an emulator, but no, I just had to get the authentic feel, you know. Well, what can you do? It's all in the past now. I've already consolidated it. But yeah, no. So these two games, whether they're original or the remakes on the PlayStation, they are definitely in my top 10 favorite games of all time. Probably even in my top 5 favorite games of all time, along with the first Knights of the Old Republic game. Uh, and I say that knowing that the Japanese role-playing game genre is vastly oversaturated with all these different games and everything. I mean, there's just so many of them, whether it's, as I said, the Lunar series, whether it's Grandia or Final Fantasy or uh, Skies of Arcadia, or I'm just picking out games that stand out to me. I mean, there are so many more, like Tales of Vesperia or uh, you know Evolution, World of Sacred something. I think it was on the Dreamcast and then later on the GameCube. Uh, but yeah, I would say that it's compared to other RPGs, even compared to games in the, as I said, Final Fantasy genre. I would say that they are they are truly and honestly in my top 5 favorite games of all time, simply because they tell, while it is in a fantasy setting, and of course there are monsters and magic and all that sort of thing, and while it does suffer from a lot of the tropes of Japanese role-playing games that I've spoken of before, uh, it tells a down-to-earth story with likable, imaginable characters. And I say imaginable, I mean you could imagine people like this actually existing, right? I mean, nowadays in games, and I mean, when I say nowadays, of course I'm going back to my past, because as I said, I haven't played a whole lot of new games within the last, well, decade actually. I mean, I really dropped off in the late 2000s because I just thought the market and the game scene, what was being released and how it functioned on the system, and the emerging trend of DRM and all this crazy bullshit that's happening. I decided to remove myself from it. I didn't whoop and holler and complain and yell at people over the internet. No, I just removed myself from the scene. It was the most powerful thing I could do. Uh, I just said, you know what, I don't agree with this. I'm not getting involved in it. I'm not giving these people my money, and I haven't. I think the last game that I bought in the last several years, and I'm talking like maybe 3 or 4 years, is when uh, Pierce Solar was released on Steam. Yeah, I think that's the last game that I bought, and it's just been sitting there, maybe halfway played through, um, maybe not even halfway actually, for probably the last two and a half to 3 years. Uh, but that's a story for another time again. Uh, I decided to buy it because I thought it was a nice throwback to, classic role-playing games, right? Uh, I absolutely adore Japanese role-playing games from the late 80s, early 90s, sometimes during the mid 90s as well, and depending on their premise and story as the years progress past the 90s. Uh, I definitely attribute this to Final Fantasy. They definitely sort of set in motion this sort of, I don't know how to describe it, this wild and wacky uh, genre that has seemed to swept up all of the JRPGs up with it. I mean, everybody has wacky, crazy, gigantic hair. They all run around carrying enormous swords that are twice the length of their body and would be unwieldy in any circumstance. It practically on the fucking moon with its 1/6 gravity of Earth, they'd be fucking unwieldy. It's stupid. I mean, it's just silly looking at this shit. Like the Monster Hunter series is a fucking joke, especially Dynasty Warriors. I mean, it's like you see these guys who are like 5'7" tops, and they're running around and doing backflips in their armor that probably weighs a consecutive 60 pounds across their body, and they're swinging around massive swords and spears and even fans at some point, and of course they're just knocking these people who are the size of them comparatively right off their feet and blowing them back like 10 feet as well. You know, it's ridiculous, and that I completely turn myself off to. I am not down with that sort of thing. I do not like it. That's why I like these games personally, because as I said, they have imaginable, pretty much realistic characters. You know, I mean, again, you know, there's which is what I like. Again, as I've told you before, define good and define evil, right? Uh, I'm a big fan of that. You know, of course, I like layers, as I said. You know, in shows like 24, I like that sort of thing. You know, as I said, quick reiteration: Jack Bauer, he's a good guy at heart, but sometimes he needs to do some pretty shitty, deplorable things to get the job done to protect the people of his country. You know, so I respect that, right? But again, these games write they write likable characters that you warm up to, right? But of course, again, you know, not everything is perfect. Not everything is all the Garden of Eden in these games with me, of course. But so things that I liked about the game series, whether they were the originals or the remakes, I liked the voice acting. I thought it was very well done. I mean, Working Designs is very, very competent in that regard. Uh, uh, the translation is very good. I would say that I like the translation. A lot of people give Working Designs a hard time for their translation with all of its Western references and all of its inside jokes and everything. Uh, I like those quirks. I think that they lend a lot to the game, honestly. You know, I am a fan of Japanese role-playing games, especially when they are localized properly. And I would say that Working Designs is one of the few companies that properly localizes these games, right? Uh, just by simply they make them warmer, you know, they make them more warm and inviting, you know. I mean, not everything has a whole bunch of strange symbolism or cultural references that a lot of people in well, practically anywhere but Japan will not understand, you know. I mean, and you know what? It's like that, I'm not wrong for saying that, you know. It's like they can certainly have their culture, but I mean, if you want me to buy your game, me personally, again, you know, it's the most powerful thing I can do is not buy your game, right? That's reasonable. Uh, is to make it attractive to your audience. Know your audience. That's marketing. That's not being a little demanding bitch. That's just marketing, you know. Um, which I think Working Designs did a very, very good job of doing. Uh, so in Victor Island, I thought was masterful at the translation. He had his hands involved in pretty much all of his games published by his company. In fact, a few others as well. I know that I was actually pretty surprised to realize that Dungeon Explorer 2 on the Turbo CD was localized and translated, and the voiceover work was done by mainly by Working Designs. All you have to do is look at the credits of the game, and of course, people like Victor Ireland and John Truitt, who is most commonly remembered as Galleon, are both featured prominently in that game. Which again, I don't know why they don't list it on their Wikipedia page or their Moby Games page or anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe it's because they didn't necessarily publish it. I think what would Dungeon Explorer 2 was that Nihon Falcom or something. Again, I'm not entirely sure. Can look it up, I guess. But no, again, I liked these games because I would have said, and I do say, that they are properly localized for their audience. Uh, I don't necessarily agree with with the way it was marketed necessarily by Working Designs. Of course, they have all of these weird collector's editions with cloth maps and full color instruction booklets, and if you don't think that's a little ridiculous, then I mean they had these little action figures or necklaces, pendants, medallions, trading cards and things like that I mean really did nothing but drive up the cost and the production resources of the game, right? So again, you have a problem with that. So, well, and I mean, again, it's all being said after the fact, right? So, and you know, Working Designs, of course, it's been around for maybe 22 years, from like the mid to late 80s to the year 2005. And I gotta tell you, just looking at their release history on Wikipedia here, again, you know, pretty much you can see by the time of pretty much later on in the Sega Saturn, you could pretty much see that they're very, I don't know, bogus. I use the term bogus. Bogus choices of games to localize really took their toll on them. I mean, like, when I started years and years ago, when I first figured out about the Sega CD and the TurboGrafx CD, when I started playing all the RPGs, because I like those games, as I've said before, um, I was very, very satisfied with what I saw from Working Designs, and I was incredibly excited to see that they had made several games. I think that they're very, very well done. They're masterful in some cases. So, but again, you can see that you look at the TurboGrafx 16, and while it has, I would say, this is early on in their um, in the company's cycle, but so of course I've heard of um, Victor Ireland's stance on producing cartridges. Oh my God, they're so they're so expensive. They just drive up the cost and everything. Yeah, don't worry, you'll just pump your packages full of fucking toys to sell with the game to increase the price anyways, right? I'll just have a drink here. Sounds like a dolphin, this water bottle. Fuck. Um, so, yeah, he says, oh, I'd rather stick with the CD medium, even though the first two games that his company published were Kadash and Parasol Stars. Turbo chip cartridge games released on the TurboGrafx 16, right? So, I mean, that whole piece of logic just goes flying out the window, right? Um, but yeah, no, the first game that I played of theirs, I'm not entirely sure if it was Lunar the Silver Star or Cosmic Fantasy 2, though they were both very early on, and when I was first researching this and getting exposed to their games as a whole. Um, but I was impressed by what I saw. I think that their translation and what they did with the script, and of course how the game was originally developed and the story and how it progressed and everything. Uh, I think that it breathed a lot of life and a lot of vigor into even at the time was a very tired old genre. Um, and but yeah, no, like I look at games like Vast Steel or Vi. Like Vi was fucking awful. Jesus Christ, I played through that game as well. Vi, that was a fucking nightmare. I can't believe anybody likes that game. That was so fucking bad. They advertised like amazing quality cutscenes and everything, and I think they're so terrible. Like the sound is like probably monoreal, and it's recorded in really low, like 22,500 kilohertz or something. It's so muffled and staticky and everything. The voice acting is fucking terrible. I mean, the story is so cookie cutter and everything, and the graphics are just balls, honestly. It's like, I fucking hated that game, I gotta tell you. I was so mad at that game. At one point, I'm not sure who it is. Um, there's this one lady who basically sticks with you. Um, maybe it's Rachel or Fei Long in the original one. Um, at one point, it's like nearing to the end. You're going to fight the main bad guy or something, and she says, you know, uh, we all must band together. If not, we won't be able to defeat the main bad guy. But then again, I'd just rather wait out the end of the world and just spend the last few days on this planet with my family and everything. So yeah, good luck with trying to save the planet without my help there, shithead. And I'm just like, I got so mad at that, I rage quit the game for a week and a half, and right after that, I had to take a 51-minute walk around my neighborhood just to clear my mind. I was so fucking pissed off. I could not believe the stupidity of that statement that was released. I'm just like, that is the worst fucking excuse that I've ever heard in a game for just your character just randomly buggering off. I mean, it's literally like having one of your employees, like your best employee, phone in tired. It's like, oh, I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. Don't feel like coming into work. Yeah. Sorry. Click. Fucking fired. But no. Well, that was a fucking tangent there. I'm really good at tangents. But no. Back to the the course at hand, I guess. Yeah, Lunar the Silver Star. I like this game. I like the characters, as I said. They're down to earth, they're realistic, they're likable and everything. But of course, they have their issues. Like, as I said, Luna, and I don't know if this is the game that pretty much pioneered it. Probably not. I mean, it was released in the early 90s, and of course, there were several, I can only imagine, 100, maybe several dozen, I don't know. I'm only guessing here. Several JRPGs that came before it that probably had sort of the same premise, but again, Luna, the main girl of the story, again turns out to be, I believe, the birthed reincarnation of your world's goddess, right? So no fucking surprises there, right? One thing that I did like about the remake is that they gave Luna more of a role in the game, uh, which honestly, when I did my playthrough that I recorded for my YouTube channel, I didn't remember that. Uh, I guess I just always remembered Luna being with you, because I had played the remake before. I had recorded this, of course, several years ago, but several years after I had played the original. So, but I mean, still, that was good, right? I mean, it gave a little more depth to the character, well, a shit ton more, actually, because she doesn't just fuck off after Maribia, right? Or does she even come with you to Maribia? I don't think so. Uh, in the original game, I think it's just you and Ramus just kind of fucking around. But, uh, yeah, so it gave her a much greater role in the story, and of course, more time to develop a relationship with the main character, Alex, right? Uh, which I absolutely applaud. I thought that's something that should have been done in the first iteration of the game, but what can you do? It's all after the fact, right? No control over it. Um, One thing that I would say is about the remake. Now, I like the original, of course, and I'm going to be talking about the remake a lot because all I can do is compare these two things. They're supposed to be the same, but they're different. One is more advanced, not necessarily better in every aspect, but one thing that I liked is the character portraits that would show up whenever people have conversations with you. I I like the fact how the portraits change to show the characters displaying several different emotions, from fear to anguish to anger to sadness to ecstasy to happiness to laughter and everything. That, I think, that donates so much to the gameplay. Honestly, it donates so much. It gives so much. Honestly, that could, to me, at certain points, that could make or break the story of a game, right? Because I mean, just constantly seeing the same sort of goofy ass, low resolution, pixelated picture of your character. He could be saying, "Oh my God, my parents are dead," and he has a goofy ass fucking look on him that would make you think he's saying, it's like, "Well, hey there, how's it going there, buddy pal?" No, that's something that I absolutely loved, and I mean, of course, the higher resolution graphics of the PlayStation really show off how well they animated the character portraits, as well as the full motion video cutscenes. Now, I like the full motion video cutscenes as well. I find it interesting. how the Sega CD, and I guess to an extent TurboGrafx CD, was able to display and play back full motion video. However, it seems that in the Lunar series on the Sega CD, at least definitely in the first one, all of the cutscenes seem to be comprised of slightly animated, I guess I could call them either bitmap or JPEG images that were just basically flipped up onto the screen and everything. It was sort of like watching a slideshow, honestly. Very, very few frames of animation. But I thought that was interesting. I guess they probably did it for probably not space constraints, because I mean, I mean, the Sega CD had shit quality video anyways. I mean, it's not like you were encoding 1080p on there or anything. But no, I think that the traditionally animated anime cutscenes, they tell the story very well, far better than any uh, in-game cutscenes ever could, and I'm very glad for them there. And while I believe there are full motion video cutscenes in Sega CD's version of Eternal Blue. I'm not entirely sure though. They could just be more advanced, as I said, the bitmap slideshows or whatever. But uh, now, of course, Lunar is for the next, or Lunar Eternal Blue is for the next review. But so now about Lunar, the Silver Star, uh, the soundtrack. I'm kind of divided on this one. The Sega CD soundtrack I thought was very, very good. Uh, maybe some of the songs had a kind of late 80s, early 90s feel to them. I'm not, that's just how I kind of felt it, but I thought that they were always very atmospheric. They always set the tone very well. And the PlayStation version having a completely different soundtrack, I don't think even a single song is recycled from the original, which I guess you can applaud them for being new and creative for developing a new soundtrack. But then again, I kind of liked some of the older tracks, and not being able to hear them in the updated version is kind of a disappointment. I gotta say, I think there are actually fewer music tracks in the PlayStation version than there were in the Sega CD version, because a lot of the towns use the same music several times, which I think I'm very certain was different in the Sega CD version. But that those are just my gripes about the soundtrack. There, I certainly liked the two overworld themes. The the two new overworld themes they're okay. I have no real problems with them, but again, I just don't necessarily really see the point of changing the soundtrack necessarily when it's essentially the same game you're playing. Like the story is pretty much the same, other than having Luna with you and everything. Um, so but I don't know. What they did in the remake in the PlayStation version, and I mean it's not at all very common. I mean, it only happens a few times throughout the entire game, even in the second one as well. But they added a bit of a platforming aspect to the gameplay that I found really, really annoying, because in the Blue Dragon's Cave, I think it's the Blue Dragon's Cave. Is it the White Dragon's Cave? I don't know. I always thought Null was the White Dragon. It's the first cave you go into when you're leaving the town of Berg. You're with that fucker Ramus, and he wants to find the dragon crystal or whatever it is. Um, and it's present in a few other locations as well. Um, you have to make your character run around the present environment to try and uh, provoke certain enemies that are now visible on screen, as they weren't in the original Sega CD version, which again I kind of like. You know, I mean, if you're there to grind levels, then you just follow around these random little bad guys that are kind of just crawling across the screen. If you don't want to fight them, you can try and avoid them, which is pretty easy if they're not those little bug guys that zoom right after you. But no, so you have to provoke these certain enemy characters that are on the screen into basically body checking certain portions of a wall or certain objects in your environment to try and clear a new pathway for you. And as I said again, it only happens like a few times, maybe like 2 or 3 times, honestly, when it's absolutely necessary. But again, I don't know. It just seems well, like, why? Honestly, it's not necessary if you ask me. It doesn't make any sense to have that sort of thing, especially in a console-style RPG. It doesn't really add anything to the gameplay other than, it's like, well, there's another fucking, another hurdle that I need to jump over. And I don't know. That kind of pissed me off, honestly. I think you had to do it again in Maribia after Zenobia does all her shit to Mel, one of the 4 heroes, and everything. Uh, but I guess I could jump to the cutscenes, especially on the PlayStation version now. The PlayStation version, both games are on several discs, and I know that they have higher quality full motion video, but then again, that's mainly because of the fact that the PlayStation itself has an onboard hardware video decompressor. But again, I haven't ripped these games as ISOs, so I don't know necessarily how much space is left. But I gotta say, some of the cutscenes seem to end abruptly. I don't know, and I don't think it's a glitch or anything like my CD drive is going or anything like that. But I don't know. A lot of the characters seem to be introduced in the same sort of way, right? I mean, while it was in the Sega CD version, you'd be greeted with a portrait shot of them, and there'd be some kind of goofy music playing in the background, something like that, and they just their mouths would flap open and close, and they'd say, "Hi, I'm Ramus," or "Hi, I'm Nash," or "Hi, I'm Kyle," and that sort of thing. Um, but now in the PlayStation version, it's more advanced, right? You actually get full motion video cutscenes in which there's more movement and there's voice acting and everything, which is entertaining. But they just seem to be really, really quick little bits, right? I mean, like set more of an atmosphere, right? Like I want a better setting. Um, so And as I said, like Lake and Mel are essentially described through the video as the same people. They both start out as really mean, big, and threatening, and then they're just ah ha 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 ah ha 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 ha, which is kind of like, yeah, these people have a really strange sense of humor. Okay, whatever though. Now, one thing that I guess I didn't like about the remake of well, I guess I should start here. In order to add well, more variation, I guess, to the number of semi-main antagonists into the game. They added the characters of Royce and Fascia, I believe they are. Two characters that kind of tag along with Zenobia, who was still present in the original game. Um, Fascia is kind of a tragic character, evil at the beginning, but slowly begins to see the light, and then she ends up being killed by her sisters. I think they're sisters, anyways. But so, and now the problem with this is that your character Nash, again, spoiler alert, he in the original game, uh, for the most part, was acting as a spy for Galleon uh, and for Zenobia, right? Now, I'm not entirely sure if in the original Sega CD version, if he had known at that time that they were evil or anything, or well, no, he did, because he basically sold your characters out, right? He said you'd be a fool to dispute, Galleon, the main bad guy, or Zenobia and everything. So he spies on you for the benefit of the antagonists, right? Uh, but he kind of comes crawling back after a while. He's been kind of kicked out and beaten down by the two main antagonists, and he begs you to take him back, right? So I mean, he was pretty much functioning as a double agent for a good portion of the original game, which added some depth to his character, right? I mean, he was always brash and he made really bad decisions a lot of the time, right? Uh, Delusions of grandeur, that sort of thing. Um, but now the problem with this in the remake was that this whole situation happens twice. Now, early on in the game, Nash keeps fucking off to meet with Royce, who is acting as some kind of weird, funky fortune teller lady, and but she's actually working for Galleon. So at this time, Nash doesn't know that, so he's blabbing all your shit to her, right? Uh, and then they figure out that she's evil, and then he's like, "Oh my God, how could I have done that? I'm so sorry," and everything, right? But then later on in the game, it turns out that Nash is still fucking doing this shit, and instead he's reporting straight to Galleon now, right? And then Galleon turns out to be evil, and then you fight Nash in Might's factory and everything. Uh, and he needs to get the lights slapped out of him again to make him realize his mistake. And I thought, well, that's kind of stupid, right? I mean, it's like the whole situation happens twice, right? I mean, it's fucking redundant, right? I mean, it's not a surprise anymore because we already knew that Nash is a fucking snake, right? So why have it happen again, right? Just to drive the point further or something? I mean, it's like, I guess he wasn't a double. I guess what does this make him, a triple agent, or is he just lying about being a double agent or something? I don't know. That was really poorly handled, if you ask me. Again, it should have only happened once, right? Because I mean, again, he just, the character is a shambles at that point, right? And I don't mean like in the game world a shambles. I mean actually written as a shambles, right? I don't know. And it's not purposeful, if you ask me. So no, that definitely could have been refined there. But one thing I would say is, now this is one of my complaints with a lot of modern anime art, is that a lot of the characters, I would say especially the women, look exactly the same. And all you really have to do is look at a cover of the two Lunar games actually, and just compare the shapes of the women's faces and how they look, the placement of their noses, how big their mouths are, how big their eyes are, and I mean pretty much if it weren't for the difference in their clothes and their hair color, they'd all pretty much look exactly the fucking same, which is actually really disappointing because, as I said back in my Cobra review, I liked that game because the classic anime art at least had a great deal of variation in how characters looked. Uh, so you could tell them apart. I mean, it added a little bit of vibrancy to the game environment, right? But I mean, of course, in these games, everybody just seems to look exactly the same. Uh, and that certainly wasn't always the case back in the day with anime. Gotta tell you though, it certainly was the case in the Dragon Ball Z series. I mean, fucking Yamcha and Goku and Gohan and Vegeta, fuck, they all look the fucking same, honestly. Same with Piccolo and that other green dude, whatever he is. Uh, but no, so Galleon, I would say in this game, is he plays a good antagonist. Galleon has a presence throughout the game. He commands presence whenever he's around. I cannot guarantee that I like how he sort of reveals himself, how it just seems that some part way through the game, everybody just seems to start talking about this Magic Emperor character, which again has honestly never been mentioned before in the game since. So and of course he reveals himself to be the Magic Emperor. Spoiler alert: he does it sort of in a he's a tragic villain, I guess you can say. He's afraid that the world will fall apart without Althena's guidance, right? And Althena is the goddess of the world that your little friend Luna is descended from, or a reincarnation of a human incarnation, I guess an avatar, if you will. Um, so he says, it's like the world needs order. The world needs somebody to maintain it, right? So he takes on that role as being one of the four heroes, right? Again, it was Dragon Master Dine, one of the other four heroes. They're Lemina. Again, it's like there's like Lemia and then there's Lamina or something, and those people are from two different games, right? Uh, Lemia Ausa, yes, she's one of the four heroes there. Um, Now, yeah, so as I said, it was Dine who, turns out to be. Uh, is Dine your father? Again, it's like I, uh, I thought, I guess I just remember at some point Dragon Master Dine being your actual father, but I guess I'm wrong. But he was basically the uh, he was the guy who approached the original form of Althena and I don't know had their little Star Trek the motion picture meeting with V'ger and everything, I guess, and then made the reincarnation possible or something. And of course, Galleon didn't understand what the shit was going on. I mean, how could he, right? So yeah, he's a tragic antagonist, but he plays it very well. The character is written very well, I would say. Um, it's definitely obvious that he's evil, of course. The glowing red eyes, the pale gray skin, and everything. Uh, and again, as I said, John Truitt does a fantastic job of voicing the character. Very, very, uh, very unsettling, definitely. But no, I have very few problems with Galleon, and again, I'm a big fan of redemption of uh, not so pure evil. I guess I don't know. I'm not all versed on this whole Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing, but I like the redemption of evil definitely. So uh, the surprise in Lunar Eternal Blue definitely made me smile because again, I guess they say they over demonized what Galleon was doing. I would say, what with his grindery and everything. And I mean, Vane, I mean, it was an exclusionist school. It was like pretty much apartheid, honestly. Nobody without magic was allowed to be there. So, I mean, blowing that out of the sky, I guess, take that, right? Cockbiter. Woo! But, no. Your main character, Alex, I like how they give him more lines, a greater frequency of lines in the PlayStation version compared to the original, where I don't think he says a whole lot at all. But I would still say, and this is a big problem that I've noticed with a lot of JRPGs, is that your main character is very silent all the time, pretty much an Afghan cop. That's a term from the Zork series. Ageless, faceless, gender-neutral, culturally ambiguous adventure person. And of course, that's to ensure that anybody playing the game can feel that the character they're playing as is themselves, right? But again, it's like pretty much all the time, whenever characters would talk to Alex, the Null, this little dragon creature that would always hang around with Alex, he would always pipe up and say, "Yeah, me and Alex are doing this, or we and the other dudes are on this quest and everything." And I'm thinking, who fucking asked you, right? I mean, it's like you could simply just change a few words in every response Null gives to these people, and change the portrait to Alex, and it would give him so much more depth, right? And I think Lunar Legend is released with a slightly tweaked storyline and a more talkative main character, which uh, would have been a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I really don't like having your character to be this this block of wood, honestly, which pretty much Alex is most of the time. Uh, Again, voice acting for all of the characters: Alex, Null, Luna, Ramus, Nash, Maya, Kyle, or Mia, or whatever. I don't know. Jessica. They're all done very well, and I mean, working designs really kept to themselves. They were like family, and I mean, the vast majority of people who did voice work on their games did voice work on all of their other games. As I said, John Truitt was in several others. Jennifer Stigel, if I'm saying her name right, probably not. Uh, I think she was. She could be Luna or maybe Jessica or something. I think she's the one who did the singing parts of it. Uh, which again, it kind of gives it a little bit of a kind of 90s Disney feel to it, which I'm not always a fan of well, musical bits in the game, but and while the Is My Star to Come or whatever it's called, I mean it's poorly translated and it's kind of, well, goofy in its own way, but I think that it was a neat little cutscene to watch, and I think that it established who Luna was as a character and everything. So I don't regret watching it. That's for certain. Um, so, but yeah, no. I guess I kind of was off put by the blue dragon, how he kind of acted like he was high all the time. I don't know. That's again, that's like I like what Working Designs did with the script, localizing it and having all these cultural references. With this game, at least, not all of them. With this game, pretty much like 70 to 80% of them, I thought I got and I understood and I liked. Uh, there were other times where I'm just like, well, you didn't necessarily have to say that. You didn't necessarily have to do that. As I said, with the blue dragon kind of acting like he's fucking popping quaaludes or something. The game itself, I would say, is pretty well rounded. There's lots of stuff to do in the game. The the battles are entertaining, I would say, but they can get repetitive over time. Uh, so not usually the best thing, but then again, I mean, it's level grinding, right? It's never a very glamorous aspect of any game. Uh, but at least it's not like it takes several dozens worth of hours to grind any levels right like it does in the Final Fantasy genre, where it's like, you play the game for 140 hours and like 100 of those hours are, well, level grinding, right? Which I mean is it's just really stupid. Honestly, it's necessary, but again, it's a waste of time, right? I like how I like how there are actual towns and everything where you can do stuff and talk to people and buy things and everything. Not like a lot of the newer Final Fantasy games. I think Final Fantasy 13, where there are no towns or anything like that. You just walk up to floating spheres, which is why, again, I don't really like a whole lot of new games today, honestly. I think that they're kind of silly in that way, shape, and form. I guess I'll go back to the soundtrack. Uh, I remember the songs like Luna's theme or uh, you know the no, of course those are composed originally by the Japanese crew of the game, but no, they certainly stuck with me, and I find myself whistling them while I'm at work. So I found those they're close to my heart, you can say. There's no real problem there. Uh, I certainly liked the fact that they had the white dragon wings. I thought it was very useful to kind of cart yourself from place to place. Uh, a sort of object, in a way, a mode of transportation that has been echoed in games like Morrowind and Oblivion. Again, haven't played anything much beyond that. Namely, in the Silt Striders are just basically just rapid transit through menus as in Oblivion. So that was pretty good. Yeah, overall, this game was pretty entertaining, honestly. I have no game-breaking problems with it, even though it can get on the nerves a few times, especially when the boss battles are hard or, when you're just level grinding for several hours and your mind practically melts out of your skull. But no, overall, it's a very very good game. I absolutely like I loved it. It's a this is why it's one of the few games that I've played through so many times, along with the other games that I've played through and recorded for this channel. Uh, so yeah, those are uh, as of right now, those are pretty much all my thoughts that I can think of on this game right now. Thanks for listening. If anybody watches this video, and I'll be back doing my ramble on the next game. Alrighty, thanks very much, and have a good one. Skwatter out.